Thank you everyone for being with us today. I'm very excited about today's commercial real estate perspectives. We have three wonderful guests with us today. Kevin Armstrong from Founders 3 Commercial Services, Dan Rosenfeld, Mid-America Real Estate Wisconsin, and Jim Young of JLL. So we are here talking about obviously the disruption in our industry today and how our leaders are managing through that disruption. Are there pieces of today's circumstances that look familiar to them? Are there opportunities, and how are they handling this? And hopefully that will give us some insights on how we're managing our businesses and how we're looking at this challenging time as an opportunity. And then of course, looking ahead to post COVID-19 and what our industry looks like. So we're going to get started. My first question is for Kevin Armstrong. Can you just give us just a baseline of how your life has changed in the last month?
Well, on a personal note, my wife and I are talking a heck of a lot more than we ever have before. My dog's getting a lot more walks. But as far as from a business perspective, it really hasn't. And the reason it hasn't is because here at Founders 3, we have really been connected with our brokers, and thankfully the technological advances that we've had with Zoom calls and our cell phones, et cetera, has allowed us to stay connected. So from that perspective, I would say that it really hasn't changed that much, other than the number of deals. The deal flow just isn't there.
Right. Dan, how about you?
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off of Kevin's comment on deal flow. I mean, what we do day in and day out is we transact. We transact, whether it's a sale, whether it's a lease, and we prospect and market properties. And, you know, this last 4 to 5 weeks, we haven't had that ability to transact or to prospect. So we're going to kind of see that pipeline empty out, and that pipeline kind of get some air in it and get a gap. When we come out of this, it's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be different for the brokers. They're not going to have that transactional base to be able to platform off of. So yeah, it's something that this differs from the financial crisis, because in the financial crisis, we weren't hibernated for 4 or 5 weeks under a stay-at-home order. And the stay-at-home order, with all these businesses being closed, you know, limits that ability.
Jim, how about you? How has life on the industrial sector changed, whether it's your business day to day or just from an industry perspective?
Well, I'd echo what the other two gentlemen have said here. It's different, and it is the transaction side that's missing. I think, like many companies, we are managing through, you know, Zoom and through Skype and through the various internet platforms to stay connected with not only our teammates, but our support staff and other business lines like the office and retail and multifamily produced in our office. But it's very different. You know, you started March going 110 miles an hour, and today we're at, you know, 10, 20 miles an hour. It's radically different in that respect. And that's in part our own choosing as brokers to hold back and not do what we have been doing, you know, for the last 4 or 5 years, which is prospecting and cultivating. Right now we're being consultants. That's, I think, a very important piece of the puzzle right now.
It's being an advisor. So when you're talking to your clients, consulting your clients, what is their mood? What's the tone, and what are they saying?
From an industrial standpoint, I think we might be in a little different vein, because a lot of our customers and clients are deemed essential. So they are still conducting business, and just different business. It's different for them too. You know, again, March 1st, many of them were really looking forward to opportunity, growth, expansion, and, you know, kind of just riding a wave of positive business events that have been occurring over the last 5, 6 years, whatever. And today it is, just we're as their advisor trying to understand where they're at, where their head's at, where their points might be. Many of them don't know though, Tracy, to be honest. It's they can't forecast where we're going to be in 6 or 8 weeks. So many of them are, just trying to get their arms around the current situation, take care of their employees, and survive.
Yeah, there's definitely some short-term and long-term considerations here. Dan, on the retail side, what are your clients saying, and what are the landlords doing?
Some of our clients, surprisingly enough, are seeing this as opportunity, and they realize that a lot of retail development or retail expansion is at a standstill, and majority of those retailers that you read about are putting their store expansions on hold, clearly with the closures that they've been forced to have on a temporary basis. There are a few in categories like your fast casual and your restaurants, food and beverage industry specifically, that are seeing this as an opportunity and still putting their foot to the pedal and continuing with their store development program, which is nice. But clearly, the majority of it, majority of the retail is I think they're going to be using this as an opportunity to thin the herd. I think we'll see the lower percentile of retailer stores. I think they'll probably close them. I think they'll see that as an opportunity to be able to get efficient and get healthy. And then we probably will see a bunch of retailers use the Chapter 11 and file for bankruptcy. I think today you read about JCPenney's contemplating that, and they could be using this as that same opportunity.
Kevin, if you could speak more from an office perspective, obviously something like 40% of the workforce has shifted to working remotely. What are your clients saying, or what are your brokers' clients saying in terms of their thoughts about how things might change?
Well, most of the calls and most of the conversations we have is our clients are asking us really, what's everybody else doing? We haven't had a lot of clients asking about rent reduction like you would, rent forgiveness like you would in the retail arena. But with 40% shifting to work at home, I think that some of that will stay. But for most of the people that we talk to, and I'd be one of them, I want to get back to the office. So I do think that there will be people that do shift to a stay at home. And again, thankfully we have great technology to do that. But I do think that some of the office designs and the office perspective there was the address-free officing where you would share a desk and a keyboard with whoever used it the day before, and bench seating and putting more people in less space and giving more common area. I think those are going to go away. And so whatever we might lose as far as occupiers in space from people working from home, I think it's going to be made up from giving individuals a little bit more elbow room in the workplace.
Jim, when we talk about the way that business has changed, can you talk a little bit about any tours that might be happening? How do those look? Are they virtual now, or are they just happening at less frequency? What has been your take, or maybe JLL's take on how is this conducted right now?
Well, make no mistake, we're not fancy office brokers. So, and that's a shout out to David Podlowski. It is very difficult for us to conduct virtual tours in our industry. Well, it would be, for a basic warehouse that's 4 walls and very little build out, it might be possible you can do a drone shoot. But when you're talking about true industrial manufacturing, and especially if there's an occupier in the space that's being toured, that can get pretty clumsy. So much of our business is conducted in person, and the occupiers do want to see the space firsthand. Again, I think we're going to see some changes taking place. As I mentioned earlier in our discussion offline, was today was the first day I ever wore a face mask and gloves on a tour, out of respect for the tenant that was occupying the space we needed to look at for a critical requirement here. So, I think from a go forward standpoint, and with more time under our belt, maybe we'll be able to implement some changes for virtual tours, if you will, and having a little more runway to get there. But it just, people like to feel and touch what they're going to occupy. There's also, column spacing and height and, condition aspects that have to be validated through a physical walkthrough. So again, the biggest change I would say is more safety precautions up front. Also, trying to work around tenant schedules or occupier operating hours. So if a business closes early at 4, do the tour at 5. And just make sure that people aren't touching everything, and just taking safety precautions.
So looking at this situation, COVID-19 has caused obviously major disruption. How does this situation and this disruption compare to any other past economic disruptions, whether it was in 07, 08, or even 2001, or any other circumstance that you could relate this to? Can you talk about how it might compare and contrast? Let's start with Kevin.
Well, I don't think this compares at all to any of them, other than the fact that the disruption and what caused it is what everybody's talking about. But as Jim mentioned, it was self-imposed. We're 5 weeks safer at home rather than an external event occurring. But the one thing that is the same is we got through those last disruptions, and we're certainly confident that we're going to get through this disruption as well. And just prior to this disruption, the COVID pandemic, is the Milwaukee real estate market and the real estate scene was pretty dynamic and vibrant, and it was humming along. And from the office perspective, I think really retail and industrial as well, is we weren't oversupplied. Where we did have oversupply in some of the previous disruptions, especially the financial disruption. And so that might mean that we're going to come out of this a lot sooner, which is a good thing.
Dan, what's your take on this? How does this compare or contrast to other disruptions?
Yeah, so I think this disruption, different than the disruption we had back in 07 and 08, that disruption created immediate opportunities through the special servicer and through the financial debacle that occurred. And there was a need for brokerage services to market and dispose of or create value for all those distressed assets, which coming out of this crisis, I don't believe we will have that same effect. There will be some. We will have, the introduction. We're anticipating a fair amount of business coming from those special servicers, but clearly it's not. It's the inflow is not going to be as much as we saw back in 07, 08, and 09.
Tracy, if I can jump in on that, is that does lead to an opportunity for brokers. Learn how to work with the special servicers. Read up about it while we're sitting at home, or your day is a little bit less structured than it has been, because there are a lot of individuals that don't know how to work with receivers and special servicers. So figure that out, and that's an opportunity.
Yeah. So Jim, for you, how does this compare or contrast?
Again, as we were talking prior to the start of the web conference here, I think it's, 2001, we went through the dot-com bubble, and then there was September 11th, very tragic events. But for me personally, that was the beginning of my career. And as a rookie in the business at that time, you had a lot of runway out in front of you. So I was about late 20s, early 30s. And it didn't have that big of an impact because I personally was taking the long-term approach in the business and had good mentors around me to, say, things will improve. Just what Kevin said a minute ago, we've gotten through it before, we'll get through it again. So, that was early on in my career. 2007, 8, that was more meaningful because it was, I had experienced a lot of good success personally in the business, saw what the potential was, and then overnight the lights turned out. And from a business standpoint, you always want to think you're prepared and ready for some disruption. And, then something like that happens, or something like this happens, where you realize just how unprepared you are for business to just stop. And it really, what I learned from 2007, 2008 is don't let your pipeline slip. Don't take for granted your contacts and your relationships because you're going to need those when the market does falter. So today, it's a lot of discussing market conditions and what things might look like going forward with your network, your past clients, your customers, your support system, because, those are invaluable to rely on in times like this. Like Kevin said, to me, this feels different in that it's man-made by ourselves, almost willingly. We chose to, agree to go into lockdown as citizens, and I think for a good cause, to limit the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Whereas 2007 and 2008, what led to that was a lot of recklessness in terms of people spending. It wasn't necessarily founded in good decision making. It was, I can get the money, so I'm going to take it and spend it. Whereas today, I think ramping up to COVID-19 in March 1st or early March, people thought they were pretty well prepared for a little downturn, and this has just been much more significant than anybody could have predicted.
So bouncing off of that, how are you navigating this particular instance? And what else did you learn from getting through 2007, 2008? Jim?
Me personally, what did I learn? Again, it's relying on your network. The fact that we will get through this. You take the long-term approach in the business. I'd like to think brokers are motivated, intuitive people, and you're going to use this opportunity to this slowdown, as Kevin points out, to better yourself, better your understanding of the industry. A couple of my teammates have talked about some additional education within the industry. So taking some online classes and whatnot, some coaching type classes, improving your own business acumen, so that when we do resume to business as what will be usual, you're ready for it. It is going to be different. I think, Dan can probably discuss it from a retail standpoint about how they expect it to be different. It was, very different this time around than it was in 2007, 2008 for the retail market. So for me, again, it's having confidence that we will get back. Maybe not exactly where we were, but we will. And understanding you as a broker, and I look at this as a transaction side of things, you can do deals when the market is good and when the market is not good. And, I think you just have to be there when the deals are ready to transact.
So being prepared. Dan, how do you navigate this circumstance? And did you learn anything from going through prior disruptions that is helping you be more prepared right now?
Yes. We have to learn to be more advisory, and I think we are more advisory than transactional. We've been spending the last 3-4 weeks, unfortunately, on the retail side. You read in the newspapers about the retailers that aren't paying April rent, now they're not going to pay May rent. So we've been spending a lot of time advising both the landlord side and the retailer side on what to do in all those requests in those situations, and to formulate what that response is going to be, whether it be a legal response, a soft response, a written response. So we've been spending a lot of times, and you create a stronger relationship when you're in that advisory role than that transaction role. I mean, to speak to Jim's point about, what's different. I mean, the thing that's going to be different, particularly on the retail front coming out of this, is, when they start talking about a restaurant at a 50% capacity, or a movie theater at 50% capacity, or the airlines not selling the middle seat, so it's clearly the sales generation is not going to be there for these retailers. And the economics of the real estate retail deal are going to be different as a result of that going forward.
Kevin, how about you? How are you navigating?
I agree with both Jim and Dan. I think the key word there is advisors, and that's brokers have really morphed from transactions into advisors. And it's one of the things that I've actually kind of enjoyed about. I shouldn't use the word enjoyed with what's going on, but from a mental stimulation perspective, trying to figure out what the world is going to look like in our industry when this is all said and done. And I think that all brokers should be taking the time, to study what's happening in the industry. Some of the, not just in Wisconsin, but globally, what are the trends? Because as an advisor, you want to tell your clients what's going on. Some of the things I was thinking about, are operable windows going to be in vogue going forward for the fresh air makeup? Are individual heating, ventilating, air conditioning systems for tenant suites going to be required, so you're not sharing makeup air with other tenants in the building? Is there going to be a day porter that just specializes on disinfecting and sanitizing space? Brokers should also be looking at the leases. I know Jim had mentioned about walking through a tenant space. Brokers should be advising their clients, their landlord clients, take a look at the lease. What are your rights to be able to go into that tenant space, pre expiration of their lease? So there is a lot that we can be doing as brokers in that advisory role that really adds value. Always be thinking about how you can add value to your clients.
So you kind of touched on what the world might look like. So can you talk a little bit about what you think the outcome of all of this might be, given that this was self-imposed? You would think we'd have a little bit more control over the outcome. So can you talk a little bit about that? And Kevin, you're on a roll. Can you just speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I think what it's really going to come down to is again, individual habits and personalities. As we've seen through this pandemic, there are people, and I think I was one of them, to start, it's nothing worse than the flu, we'll get through it, all the way to, predicting hundreds of thousands of people are going to die. So you have people at both ends of the spectrum here on the severity of this. And that's just human nature. And so with our clients and the people that we go out on tours, there's going to be some people that are going to say, yeah, come pick me up, jump in the car, everything's going to be fine. There's going to be other people that are going to say, guess what? I'm going to meet you there. You can open the door and I'm going to go in. So I think it's going to be all over the board how our industry is going to be adapting to this. And also I think on the landlord side, on the owner side, one thing that I think is going to be very important for them is going to be, professional management, professional cleaning, et cetera. Because I really do think that is something that, with the wash your hands for 20 seconds, don't touch your face, don't do all of these habits that we've had before that we're starting to break. People are going to be interested in the space that they occupy, that the landlords treat their space and treat the common areas of the building, with those kid gloves of keeping it clean, keeping it sanitized, keeping it disinfected. I think that'll be very important.
Yeah, Dan, can you just speak to what you think the outcome might be? You touched on it a little bit with maybe some retailers kind of giving up at this point, but also kind of maybe some of the opportunities.
Sure. We see a lot of opportunities. We see opportunities primarily as a result of the high unemployment rate. We're going to see a lot of entrepreneurial, franchise-based retailers open up. And we're going to see new industries being created, and we're going to be seeing new opportunities. So while a result of the closures will have a larger vacancy rate. The supply clearly will outweigh the demand, but we will see a fair amount of new retailers that want to take advantage of such as a result of their employment situation.
And I agree with that opportunity as well in the office market. Is you had several million people sitting at home watching Shark Tank and The Profit and deciding, I'm not going to have somebody control my future. I'm going to do it on my own. So there will be a number of new businesses that start. The other opportunity I think that's out there, and it was one that I think really got its name and its process through the financial crisis, and that is the term, the blend and extend. For companies that had a long-term perspective, knowing they're going to be in business 10, 15, 20 years from now, and they see opportunities in the market with lower rental rates being offered by the landlords, immediate concessions, and from the landlords looking at some longer-term leases commitment, which they needed in order to go to their lenders and refinance their loans. We're going to see some really good companies taking advantage of these opportunities as well in the blend and extend world.
So, really I want to kind of, think about, go back to how you're advising maybe some of your teams. You all have teams of young brokers, those who are newer in the business. Can you talk a little bit about how you're, speaking to them about what this is, what this looks like? I'm sure they're asking you a lot of these same questions.
I'll start. Yeah. Well, both Dan and I were young brokers in this business, and this is an entrepreneurial business. And you have to be prepared for the bumps, because I guarantee you, everybody who has started in this business, whoever interviewed them, they said, you're going to see a lot of highs and you're going to see a lot of lows. This is just one of those lows, and you just get through it. You get up every day with a optimistic attitude that things are going to get better, which we've seen from history, they do get better, and stick with it.
How about you, Dan?
We saw a lot of weeding out of the brokerage world back in the financial crisis. We saw a lot of people leave the industry, particularly on the service provider and the developer side as well. A lot of developers got flushed out from that financial debacle. I don't think we're going to see that same result coming out of this crisis. Back in the financial crisis, it took us about a good, healthy 3 years to come out of it. I don't foresee that coming out of this crisis. And again, to share Kevin's words, it's just going to have to be a lot of perseverance and a lot of dedication from a lot of the younger brokers to rebuild that pipeline that emptied out as a result of this.
And if you can make it through this downturn, you're going to be ready for the future for anything that comes at you.
Yeah, and there are a lot of young brokers. I mean, we had a huge spike over the last couple of years who, kind of to your point earlier about building that pipeline and making sure that the pipeline is full and the pipeline is always refreshed. They don't necessarily have that pipeline. So, Jim had referred to talking to some of his folks and continuing their education, some of those other things. How do you foresee that reintegration of your teams? Is this going to be different? Are you going to be, making larger teams? How are you going to be integrating some of the changes that are coming from this disruption then once you go back to the normal way of doing business?
Yeah, I don't think that we are going to see a problem with the younger brokers, just kind of not having a pipeline, because for the most part, everybody is teamed up with a senior broker and really mentoring them. People are connected with CRW and the next gen. So there is that buddy system, mentor system that's in place. Certainly some of the things don't translate into dollars, but I would say that our industry, we've all been there, and the people that have persevered remember that, and take care of the younger brokers in the industry.
How about you, Dan?
I mean, I agree with Kevin. We definitely have a stronger CAR-W today than we did historically, and a stronger next gen. And I see that being a real plus and positive on the retention side of a lot of these younger brokers, because they're all, from what I see, very active and very involved. And I think that, that's kind of the magic of what we can use going forward.
Yeah, that's the key. They get engaged, and you'll get back what you put in.
So I know that kind of sounded like your summary piece of advice, but if there was one takeaway from today's chat, what would you want people across the spectrum, whether they're starting out in the business or whether they're a few years in, what would you want them to just remember?
Save for a rainy day, because it is going to rain.
It's kind of raining right now, right?
It is.
Just have a great attitude. The real estate isn't going anywhere. It's just a matter of who and for how long the people, groups occupy it. So the business isn't going anywhere. Just stick with it.
How about you, Dan?
I would concur. I mean, the brokers need to pivot. There's going to be plenty of opportunities coming out of this, and they just have to embrace those new opportunities, and quite frankly, maybe some new ways to work as well.
Well, I think we have a lot of great takeaways from today's session. I heard a lot of opportunistic tone in the things that you were saying. There's opportunity here. And while this doesn't look like what we've seen before, there still are a lot of things that we can do to make our industry strong and continue to be vibrant. We had great fundamentals going into this, and we will get through it. I heard a lot of dialogue around being resilient, about being flexible, about being realistic about what's ahead. So I thank you again for doing this and for sharing your time and sharing your insights for our commercial real estate industry. Thank you.